Okay, welcome back. In this session, we're gonna check for the System Center Configuration Manager pre-requirements. I'm gonna teach you in this lesson for the pre-request what all the things to be installed on a SCCM server before you install actual SCCM server binaries. So this is my SCCM server as I explained earlier. So which has automatic reconnect with the uh, remote desktop connection with the background of System Center Configuration Manager, so that you don't get confused that this is SCCM server. Also have this is domain controller, this is my Windows 10, right? So you can see that this is a screen which we left over last time. Now let's go back to CM01. So before I do anything, let's have a look on the general configuration of the system. So I should go to the computer management. This is where I can see my task manager for my processors and the performance of the RAM. So it's just the 2 GB of the RAM which is assigned if you look at here, and the processors also 4 virtual processor are there, okay, which processor wise it's good, but the memory is not good. And let's go to the disk management. So it's just the C drive is exist, there's no other drives. So what Microsoft recommends, Microsoft recommends a very good configuration, which is very high if you're considering as the production server, like a standalone server, at least 16 cores, and the GB of the RAM is close to 100 GB, and the SQL server to be assigned at least 80% of that memory allocation dedicated. So these are the specs. Okay, nowadays every hardware will have a very good specs definitely. Okay, but I would recommend starting with at least 16 core and minimum of 32 GB to 64 GB of RAM. That would definitely helps a good SCCM server configuration. However, you can follow in general whatever the Microsoft recommendations along with the write-in configuration for the disk performance, and make sure that you have the 1 Gbps Ethernet network card. Definitely all the servers will have this configuration, and the write-in would be definitely will be there. However, these are the core things like the RAM as well as the processors. So I would recommend at least if you're looking for a primary site or a cache site, definitely go for at least 16 CPUs, and then at least the 64 GB of RAM at least. Okay, but here it is Microsoft recommending 96 GB. Yeah, you can go for that. Even you can go for 128 GB of RAM if you have the right resources and the right count of the user count. There is sizing options which would normally calculate it. Basically, for example, if you're looking for the SQL Server hardware scaling, every user it requires at least 5 MB of the disk space. That's how they calculate it. And coming to the normal other roles like a management point and distribution point, it doesn't require a huge memory and the huge hardware, but these are anyway, the roles gets installed. These are the roles, right? These roles definitely gets installed on your primary side. So definitely it would be good to go with 16 GB 16 gig 16 core processors and 64 GB of the RAM at least, or you can go for 96 if you have the right hardware with you. Okay, never mind. And let's go back to the other options. Like if you're, as I said, earlier, it all depends on the number of clients. If your clients are increased, you need to go for maximum disk space and the maximum percentage of your cores to be increased, and your RAM should be allocated accordingly. Okay, each client requires approximately 5 MB of this space, which I've already spoken. This is in addition to the combination of 32 25% of the site database, and these are the things. And the clients anyway, nowadays any of the hardware definitely will be can meet of these conditions, like operating system with at least um, 384 RAM, 384 MB of RAM. Definitely any of the machine will have 2 gig these days, at least, or 2 or 4 gig of RAM, and the 500 megahertz of the processor, definitely it is supported. And also Pentium 4, which is an older version in fact, so which also supported. That means nowadays any of the hardware which is definitely supported. Okay, and now let's go back to the actual lab mission which I'm trying to do. Okay, so in this so before we jump, if you look at the lab deployments, what Microsoft recommends is if you are doing some kind of POC on few of the computers, you can go for this kind of configuration. So 4 core with 8 to 12 GB of RAM and 100 GB of the disk space. So all together combined, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign at least 200 GB of the disk space. Okay, and 4 core anyway. I have this processors. Here you can see that there's a 4 core virtual processor is already allocated, and the RAM after increase, I'm going to increase that, and I'm going to assign a D drive as a dedicated with close to 200 GB. Okay, and then that would do the pre-requirements for the hardware side. Let's open up our hypervisor. Since I need to open the console, I need to go to the administrative tools, go to the Hyper-V Manager, and before that anyway I need to shut down the computer so that it gets shut it down. So turn off this PC, go to the settings, make sure you have at least 12 GB of the RAM. And I can also set in fact the minimum as 8 GB and can increase if really needed, but I don't need any dynamic memory. Let it allocate as a static. At the 4 core I have already assigned, and I have already one hard disk. I'm gonna assign one more hard disk. So I'm gonna add additional hard drive, simply selecting SCSI controller and add hard drive, and the path path would be, and just to tell you, for better performance always go for fixed disk space, so that it gives you good performance in your lab, even in the production also. But in my case I have a disk space issue, so I'm going to use dynamic expanding, which would help me out. So this is CM11 extra drive, D drive. So I'll just give as the D drive. Next, it's gonna create a new one. Finish. That's it. And apply. Now I have a new disk got assigned. So let me start the computer. Continue. So it's gonna start the computer. When the computer is started, I can connect from here to see exact. It's going to take some time, looks like, because of the merging process. It's fully automated. So the computer started. I should be able to connect to the RDP. Let me reconnect. I should be able to log in. And if I go back to Explorer, I don't see that because it's not scanned and available. See, I don't see it, right? So what I have to do is, as a first step, I have to go to the computer management or disk management. Either way, you can go to the disk management. This disk is not allocated. Let's allocate by initializing online. So there's a small window should come up. Initialize disk. So this initialization should happen. Okay, then the disk is available. If I want to change my drive letter and path, I can always change to something else here. And my drive, I'm gonna new simple value I'm gonna create, and I'll see drive letter would be D, and the path would be CM. That's configuration manager. That's the stand for CM. Now it's got the, if you go back to the Explorer, you can have a C drive, and this has been changed to P drive, and you have something here, right? So it's not mandatory that you do change, your drive letters, but I follow the standard of always SCCM should get installed in some other drive. Okay. So to install an SCCM only on this drive, while installation you can show the path. That's fine, but still SCCM has an built-in mechanism that will always try to take the free space wherever it is available. So to secure other drives not to use for SCCM application, there is a method that to be created. Right click, new, file. Okay, this is a file type would be the no SMS, no underscore SMS on underscore drive.sms file. But if you see here, this is a text file, so I need to rename that to the .sms extension, not to the text, right? So I'm going to do that, and this is a simple file. So what happens by doing this? So anything related to the SCCM, it doesn't dump on that drive. So you're saying that, hey, no more SCCM to be used on this drive. That's the meaning of that file. Okay, and it doesn't have anything inside that. It's a simple file with an extension of .smsc. So that has been already created. Now, as a next step, while we install SCCM, let's have it simple drawing. Like you are gonna install here your configuration manager, which is, we call it sometimes SCCM. Okay, and definitely SCCM requires the database to store the data, right? So you need to have the SQL server. Okay, so the SQL server, if you want to install on the same machine, you can do it, or you can create another VM. Okay, again, allocate the hardware specifications for that, for the sizing and scaling, and then recommended hardware, you can follow it, and definitely you can install SQL. Once SQL is installed, then while installation of the configuration manager, that is a SCCM, you will point this as the server where you have the SQL. Okay, then automatically it gets created some database inside the SQL server, and SCCM gets installed here as part of your installation steps. However, in our lab, I'm going to do actually one VM, which is the current VM, which is here CM. Okay, so in this CM, I'm gonna install even the SQL also. Okay, so once the SQL is installed, okay, and also the configuration manager, I'm gonna try to install it so that I'll come to know what are the things I have gonna use it actually as part of the SCCM installation. It gives you all the options. Also the default configuration would give you some options like management point role to be enabled. We talked about the management point earlier a little bit. Also we talked about the distribution point, which is a default role. These are the core roles which will be automatically enabled as part of the installation. Also while installation, it will prompt you whether you're going to install as a central administration site, that is a CAS site, because right, while we installation, if you remember the vocabulary which I was talking about, the first thing would be the site, right? Site has the CAS site, which is CAS, central administration site, or you can have the primary site and secondary site, right? So the secondary site will always report to your primary always can be a standalone, or it can report to CAS site, and clients doesn't managed by CAS. Okay, always clients reports to the primary side definitely, and load can be uploaded here to the secondary to primary, right? So that's what we discuss in the introduction of the vocabulary for SCCM. Okay, now when we will look at the prerequisites which are part of which are required for the SCCM. So if you look at this document, okay, it's all about the roles which you're going to use. For example, if you're going to use the distribution point, definitely that is a core role. Okay, this has a different requirements. Okay, so normally SCCM, how it works is, let me tell you the core of the SCCM. It is built on IAS, okay, which you definitely need to have, and also this is purely built on a .NET framework, this application. So definitely .NET framework is needed. Also the IAS is needed, and also to store this you need to have the SQL database. These are the key three things. And also SCCM also have other two key features, right? One is the operating system deployment, right? For the operating system deployment, you need to have the ADK to be installed. So that means ADK also to be part of the prerequisite. Also for the patch management, you need to have the WSS. So what Microsoft doing on SCCM product is, on top of SCCM in the background, they are actually installing the WSS. And similarly for the operating system deployment, they're using the Windows deployment services, that's the WDS role. So what we have to do is we have to enable few of the roles like IIS, WDS, and also WSS, right? So these three of the roles which are prerequisites. However, WDS is no need to enable manually. When you enable the operating system deployment role, it gets automatically enabled. However, it requires the ADK, Windows Automated Deployment Kit, is required for as a pre-requirement. Okay, let's have a look on it. What we discussed now. If you look at overall high level, .NET Framework 4.0, 4.5, okay, 4.5.1, all of these are .NET Framework, basically it's required. Okay, let's also look at the, see, these are the .NET frameworks are required, right? ADK is required, and when you install the SQL Server, automatically VC++ also gets installed, as well as the .NET Framework. Okay, so make sure that when you are installing on the same machine, definitely if you install the SQL Server, these gets automatically installed for you. So in this list, ADK is the only thing you need to download and install that, okay, which is a 4 GB almost, which you need to download and install, or you can install from the web application, okay, if you have the internet connectivity enabled. And if you are planning for the secondary site, definitely the similar things, but little bit of the features only. Like the SQL Server is not required, but it is a SQL Express edition is required. Okay, or the the free version of the SQL. In fact, okay, when you're planning for the database server, you need to have the SQL Server supported configurations, which in fact we talked about it, right? Let me show you that I prepared as part of the PPT also. Yeah, we can look at this. So these are the SQL servers which we talked about it. In the PPT also I attached that. Starting from 2012 to 2017, any of the version is supported. However, for few of them, especially for the 2017 version, a cumulative update 2 is needed, and for other versions it doesn't need any of the CU. It starts from the base. If you have the cumulative update, well and good, because that would definitely fix a lot of bugs which are related to the SQL. So better to you have the CUs if you have already. Okay, and these can be supported for your primary site as well as cache site and secondary site. Okay, and if you're looking for the secondary site, it's only supported Express editions. I mean, these Express editions in other way is not supported to have your primary site or cache site. Okay, it is only used for the basically for the secondary site. And starting from 1710 of your configuration manager version, current branch version is only supported for 2017. For example, if you are planning to install 1610 configuration manager, it doesn't support, in fact. Okay, so you should end up with any of this products. Okay, and if you're planning for 1710, yeah, it supports any of these versions. Okay, or the above. As I said, current version is 1810 and above, as in this recording of the March 28th. We also talked about SMS provider. If you remember, the SMS provider is a key for SCCM. While installation, it gets installed SMS provider, and this is nothing but your WMI repository. So this needs definitely the ADK okay, EDK related. Also, the some of the roles definitely need all these are already covered in above. For any of the roles or any of the features to be used, you need to have .NET framework, definitely. Okay. And for the IAS, in the IAS there are a lot of features are available, or the options while you are installing. The key thing is here IAS version 6. Okay, when SMS was released, okay, with the 2003, IAS 6 was the version with the 2003, right, Windows Server. So the same code compatibility, whatever the IAS code functionality was there with the version of 6, that must to be enabled. So you need to enable the IAS 6 management compatibility complete checkbox. And also for the security, you need to choose the Windows authentication and other application development related .NET frameworks to be extensions to be enabled. So these are the things unto IAS to be configured. And coming back to the memory management for related to the IAS pools, what happens is you need to allocate at least a 5% of the computer available memory, which is by default in fact, but what happens is with the experience of mine, especially if you have WSS also enabled, WSS pool gets stopped. So you need to set the pool configuration for to utilize more requests to handle to set the value to be 0. I'm going to show you that also as part of the installation, post installation. Okay, and these are the roles definitely, because if you remember, the entire SCCM uses IAS. IAS is the core. If IAS services are stopped, uh, it doesn't work your management point. That means the client doesn't receive any policy. Content can't be distributed. Okay, everything is dependent on IAS. IAS is the key here. Okay, so DP role also needed IAS, and these are the features which are remote differential compression, which is used for one of the feature for the DP which is required. Okay, also the PowerShell is needed, and the VC++ anyway this gets installed when you install the SQL Server. Okay, and for the PXE anyway WDS role to be enabled, and that would be automatically enabled when you try to do that. And as I said earlier, 3.5 with SP1 memory management, all these are the very similar. If you look at if you notice any of them, these all are close to the same things, right? And the reporting service point is a framework, and for dedicated SQL reports you need to have the SQL reporting services point also to be installed. So when you install SQL Server, you may be having only the database, right? But you also need to have reporting services to be installed as part of your SQL. However, this reporting services point can be installed on a separate server also. It all depends on our high availability and the scaling and the sizing of the configuration. But in our case in the lab, I'm going to install on one machine, on a single machine. This is the service connection point. This is also the same thing. Almost everything is the same rules, right? So bits also required. Bits is a part of your operating system. Okay, we talked about the background intelligent services as part of our vocabulary. Okay, this is why very important would be the, if you talk anything, you need to have the proper vocabulary related to the SCCM so that it would be easy to understand.